Today I want to talk about a permaculture concept called edge. In fact, it's not really a permaculture concept at all. It's a concept that we use in permaculture, but it's actually a concept that is used widely in ecology. And this concept is the concept of edge. Now, edge plays a really important part in the way that we design ecosystems, specifically ecosystems for human habitat, in that systems with more edge are more productive. To help conceptualize this, let's go through an example that illustrates why having more edge actually can make your systems more productive and why you might want to include more edge in the designs that you do. And then I'll leave you with some ideas at the end as to how this concept applies to other domains and other areas within your design. So let's talk about two ponds. Okay, these ponds are going to have completely different shapes. However, we're going to make a couple of assumptions. So number one, the surface area of pond A and pond B is going to be equal. So the same amount of square meters or square feet on the actual surface itself will be the same. Number two, we're going to assume that the volume of both ponds is going to be equal. Okay? And number three, hopefully you can see that the perimeter of pond A is going to be different than the perimeter of pond B. And so the perimeter of B, basically the edge, is going to be greater than the edge or the perimeter of A. Now you might be wondering why edge has an effect on the productivity of these two ponds. And the explanation is pretty simple. So if we look at this purely from an actual example of stocking density of fish within a specific pond, what we can see is that if you were going to go to somebody to ask them to purchase fish to stock your pond, what they would do is ask you what either the surface area of the pond actually was or what the perimeter edge of the pond was. And these are typically the two metrics that they use to determine how many fish a specific pond can sustain. Now the reason they use surface area is pretty simple. When we have a pond surface, the amount of oxygen that can be diffused into a pond is going to be a function of the amount of surface area exposed to air. So the more area, the more edge that you have in order to be able to diffuse oxygen. But this is a limiting factor in that you can only have a certain amount of surface area per volume, and it's going to be based on the depth of the pond primarily, and also the size of the pond. So it's not easy to manipulate the amount of oxygen that a pond can diffuse. Edge, on the other hand, is a really interesting characteristic because on the edges is where we have all of our plant life. Plant life typically likes to grow in the shallows. This is where all of our reeds are going to be and various wetland plants. And as these plants photosynthesize, they take sun, they take nutrients from the air, and they turn that sun and the CO2 into oxygen, which is then diffused into the water. So plants help to increase oxygen, but in these shallows we also have all of the bug life. And it's the bugs that grow in these shallows that actually create food for the fish. And so the more edge we have, the more plants we have, the more shallows we have, the more productivity the pond actually has. This edge also helps us to increase, as we mentioned earlier, the amount of oxygen that the pond can diffuse. And so you can see how increasing edge actually can dramatically increase productivity. Now we can see this effect in multiple other domains as well. So for example, fences are edges on fields, and they accumulate nutrients. We also can see how fences will accumulate snow in the wintertime. Cracks in sidewalks are edges that accumulate nutrients, and over time, that's where we typically have plants. One of the best examples that I've come across with regards to edge is a woman who was running a business at the ferry in British Columbia, where she was actually selling smoothies. And so, if you know anything about um, ferries in BC, people will basically accumulate at the edge of the mainland or on the island, and they have to sit there for up to an hour sometimes waiting for the ferry to come. And so things always accumulate on edges. And so after talking to her about her smoothie business, what I found out was that she was generating close to $70,000 or $80,000 a year in revenue because people were bored and they were sitting in their cars, and so what else to do but to go and talk to the local smoothie business and purchase a smoothie. So things accumulate on edges. Anybody that's driven in Mexico knows that they have speed bumps all over the place called topes, and whenever we came across a tope, what we found was that there was always people selling tacos. There was typically a shock shop, because if you didn't see the tope, chances are you were going to destroy your car driving over the tope, or a muffler shop, that was the other one. And so over time, what we realized was that topes actually accumulated resources as well, sometimes broken brakes, shocks, or mufflers, but also it was a great place for businesses to set up. In real estate agents always talk about the importance of location, and generally the best locations to set up stores are going to be along edges. Lastly, I want to talk about the most biodiverse ecosystem on the planet, which is actually the mangroves. Mangroves are subtropical ecosystems that have multiple edges coming together in the same place. So they're basically plants that can live in both fresh and salt water. We refer to this as brackish water. They occupy the air, they occupy the water, and they occupy the soil. And I don't think there's any coincidence that this is one of the most productive ecosystems from a biomass perspective on the planet. So hopefully you found this interesting. Check back often. We'll do more of these permaculture concepts going forward, and hopefully you find that they help you in your design practice. If you're interested in learning more about our longer term programs, we offer multiple permaculture design courses per year in Western Canada, and we go through all of these concepts in great deal. Thanks so much. Have a great day.